Welcome to this week's edition of Dugout Dish Podcast. I'm Andy Kirikides, joined by our longtime friend, Jonathan Grasse. What's going on?
Oh man, what an awesome couple of weeks we've had, right? Like, regionals, supers, Omaha, first couple days. I know we're recording this before the final. I don't know if you can argue that we maybe Kentucky, I think you could probably give a good argument for, but I think you got the two best teams in terms of consistency the whole way playing for the national championship. Texas A&M had a little bit of a snub, and I feel bad for Texas A&M because they're limping into this thing, and them at full strength would be way different. But I think if you really look at it, the two best teams from Valentine's Day till today, we got the two best. I mean, me and you talked about it. Like, felt like the ACC was good. Got a bunch of teams to Omaha, but they weren't quite, in that upper echelons of the SEC. Saw that, and I know you pointed this out, and I'm not going to steal your stat, but not one ACC had any wins against the SEC. So you saw that. Like, the SEC is just built different. And again, I know, opening weekend on that Monday, I got on here and I, cut it up with you, and we gave a ton of shade to the SEC because they had an off weekend. But day in and day out, they've been the best league. It's going to be a phenomenal final. The number one overall seed might get over the hump for the first time since 2001. And I think I'm a huge fan of Tony Vitello. I've been adamant about that on this podcast, and and I know that a lot of people will not agree with me on that. But having shared a meal of dinner with Tony and hanging out with those guys on that staff, like, I think you could think differently when you do that. And there's no doubt in my mind I'm 100%. And I love the Texas A&M staff, but I'm definitely rooting for TVD and for those guys to get over the hump. I mean, obviously 2 years ago, they were the number one overall seed by a long shot. And Link Jarrett and Notre Dame and co. put a kind of a kibosh on that. But that's where I'm going right now. But what a phenomenal! I mean, 3 walk-offs in a row, catch at the wall for Texas A&M against Florida. Like, been awesome. Like, there's nothing better right now. College baseball right now is at its top peak.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. And like, I'm hit on the Tony V piece. Like, at this point, if you can't recognize that guy's ability to motivate and the passion he has for his players and the passion he has for the game of baseball. I mean, the press conference he had after the Evansville, where he talked about the center fielder crashing into the wall, like, if that doesn't really sum up what that dude's about, I think you're stuck on the team that he had 2 or 3 years ago that probably rubbed some people the wrong way. And like, he's a different coach now. But I don't think any of the things that make him awesome have changed, which is those kids compete their butts off. They play super hard. They compete for each other. They play with their personality, which I think kind of sums him up. Like, he's not the guy who sits on the bench and takes his notes and coaches with no emotion. Like, he doesn't do that. But I think that's what makes him great. And I think that those guys that play for him in that coaching staff, like, whatever they bring to the table every day, it bleeds into those players, and those guys play their butts off for him. And it shows, and I
think one of the things too that, and I mean, you've talked about this a lot. Tony's had no change in his staff, basically. Russ Kivett went to Houston to make a huge pay raise when third assistant was still a volunteer role. Josh Linder and and Frank Anderson have been there since the beginning. Like, dude, he's had no change. Like those guys will go to war for him. And I think it's something special, man. Like Tennessee baseball was garbage. Like they were the laughing stock of the SEC. The laughing stock of the SEC, and he's gone in there and done nothing but just win, and win. He's had 2 number 1 overall seeds. I think this is the year they finally get over the hump. And honestly, as crazy as it sounds, like they're not the best. Like 2 years ago, Tennessee was the best team in this event. Like it wasn't even like, I don't even know if you can say, like, you can't even go into this thing and say, oh, well, Tennessee's going to roll blank out, Chase Burns out, which Chase Burns was their number 3 2 years ago, which is crazy because he might be the number 1 overall pick at Wake Forest. But I don't even know who, like, if you're like, yo, who's like Tennessee's number 1? Tennessee's number 1 might be their reliever. Like, they don't have a number 1. And like, they've just done it so different than they have in years past. Christian Moore, who, again, I've been on this numerous times throughout the year. He's the best player in college baseball. Somebody's going to get fired. That's the scouting director, because somebody's going to take somebody over him, and he's going to end up being like a 10-time All-Pro, and he's going to get somebody fired. I can just predict you that. So, like, if you work in scouting, like, don't pass on this kid. Like, he is the best player in college baseball. Like, I don't even think it's close. Like, and I love Condon. I love Tags. This dude he's undersized. I know he only plays second base. He's going to get you fired. Don't pass him. That's all I'm going to say. The offense is dynamic. I don't know. They're super legit, and they're the number 1 overall seed for a reason. And I feel bad because Texas A&M's kind of limping into this thing, but Schloss has done a phenomenal job of rallying the troops, getting the most out of his guys. I mean, he's getting more out of his roster than maybe anybody in the country, maybe even more than Tennessee, to be honest with you. Like, he's getting so much out of his roster. Like, he's got guys coming in, like, pinch hit bomb. Like, they've done a phenomenal job. And the fact that they're even in this, situation on Monday, it's a credit to their coaching staff. I said it, I think it was March, or maybe it might have been April. Max Wiener was one of the best hires in the entire country. And now Max, he's an absolute rock star in terms of pitching coaches. Like, what he's done with that staff is out of control. Shout out to their entire coaching staff, because I just think they're getting more out of that roster than maybe anybody else in the country. Tennessee's more talented, and it's gonna show on Monday and Tuesday, and they're gonna win the whole thing. But goodness gracious, Schloss, man, what you've done with that hire with Max, with that roster, with the injuries, they deserve an absolute ton of credit, because I think a lot of people would have just written them off right away with all the injuries, when they got to Omaha, because they kind of limped into it. Even though they didn't limp into it, they had a ton of injuries coming into it. And
they lost a top 10 pick in Montgomery. I mean, you look at his numbers. I'm going to pull them up real quick. Like, you're talking about a dude who hit 27 jacks this year, 14 doubles, hit 322. Like, he's your most potent offensive player. You take him out of the lineup, and you got Hayden Schott, who's just basically a professional hitter playing on, 1.5 legs right now. And you got guys like Caden Kent stepping in. And I mean, let's not pretend like that dude didn't play this year. Like, you started 21 games, you had 100 at bats, but like, you typically don't have guys step up and play the way that they have in the moment that you're requiring them to step up and play in. And obviously that's a huge credit to guys like Caden Kemp. obviously comes from a strong lineage. If any of you are familiar with his father, who happened to be probably the greatest offensive second baseman of all time, but like you're still asking a young kid to step up who isn't getting quote unquote regular at bats and just well, we need you to play second. Oh, well, our center fielder got hurt, so now we need you to go to third, and they just do it. And yeah, it's a huge credit to the kid, 100%. But you, that's coaching. That's coaching your players every day and making sure they're prepared. And like that can't go overlooked in the grand scheme of things when you're looking at this A&M team. And like, yeah, I do think that they're probably a touch overmatched right now. But when you throw it at a 3.8 clip and you got a guy like Ryan Prager who you're going to run out there in one of those games, like if this becomes a one, I mean, you know as well as I do, like if they split and it gets to that final decisive game, like it doesn't really come down to who's better. It just comes down to who plays better that day because the margins are so thin. Like you're talking about the two best teams in the country pretty much from start to finish. And like who the hell knows? Like the one thing that Texas A&M has going for them more so than any other team is that bullpen is absolutely freaking nails. Ashenbeck pitching in at a 1.54. I mean, that dude's thrown 70 innings out of the bullpen this year, and he's punching a dude an inning. Cortez comes in and throws absolute freaking nitro, and he's punched 95 guys in 60 innings. The Bad Maiev kid is just a big hunk of meat who comes in and comes at you. They got that freshman lefty who's got he's got one of the best arms in the country. So if you get to that third game, they're actually really equipped to win that third game because of the quality of that bullpen. And I mean, nobody's really been able to beat Prager this year. And you watch him throw, all the people out there are probably like, well, he only throws 88 to 90. Like, how can he get by? It's like it's a lift fastball. It's freaking 60 grade command. And it's any pitch, any count with a plus breaking ball. And you start to realize the finer points of pitching that go into being successful at this level. And he's a prime example of that. It's elevated fastball at the top of the zone. It's premium location in and out. Like he gives hitters fits because you can't guess. He's a really hard guy to sit on a pitch because he doesn't sit to norms. And I mean, this goes back to your guy, Coach Weiner, who has been able to identify what this kid does really well and put him in situations to be successful. So, the mixing and matches, I'm going to steal a phrase from one of our good friends, but like shapes and speeds. And you'll see him throw a ball arm side top of the zone. And then the next pitch is, a top to bottom breaking ball, bottom of the zone into a righty. And you start to see guys as a hitter, you can't lock into one portion of the plate and you can't lock into one speed. And it becomes really, really difficult. And, we talked about this earlier today, just on a random phone call, but like velocity doesn't scare any of these kids. Like Christian Moore doesn't care if you're throwing 100. So if he knows a fastball's coming, it doesn't really matter how hard you're throwing it. But with a kid like Prager, when you have to think about 3 potential pitches, but when you really dial it in, his fastball to the 4 quadrants is 4 different pitches because it's got 4 different types of movement. It's got some arm side life down and away when he throws it down in a way to a righty, but it's got that lift when he goes to the top of the zone, and it cuts a little bit when he gets to the inner side of the plate. So like you're really dealing with like 7 pitches because of his ability to like truly command the baseball. And I mean, that's a tough matchup for anybody. And like he's going to have his work cut out for him trying to get through that Tennessee lineup who, I mean, I saw some wild stat today that let me pull this up, between Moore, Burke, Dreiling, Tiers, and Amick. So you've got 5 guys in that lineup. They've hit more home runs than 294 of the 306 Division I teams in college baseball. So, like, that's tough. But
good luck.
I could see this thing going 3.
No, I'll be honest. If we don't have a game on Wednesday, I'd be shocked. I think, like you said, and again, I know I made my pick with Tennessee and their lineup and the whole but Prager's an absolute handful. Max Wiener's done an absurd job with that pitching staff because that pitching staff is basically intact. They've had a handful of transfers, but there's not that many. Not like the rest of the SEC. Like, kudos to him. One of the things I just want to get to, and I'm just going to kind of go on a tangent here, is like I think when you're going out and no AD might not be an AD in the country that watches this, but I'm just going to go on a tangent here, Andy, and I'm sorry. If you're going to go out and hire somebody, go and look at what's worked. Stop worrying about what's going to be cool to the alums. Stop worrying about what's going to be cool to your fan base, and just go worry about what's going to work. We've had 8 coaches in Omaha. Do you know how many of those coaches have coached in professional baseball?
I think maybe one solely coached with the Twins for like one season in their golf.
Half a minute.
What's that?
Half a minute he coached for the Twins.
Yeah, I think he coached for one season in between Virginia and Clemson.
8 coaches. Guys, stop trying to reinvent the wheel. Go hire, I promise you, the fancy assistant, the assistant coach who works his butt off is the way to go. TV, Tony, guess what? Guess what he did? Tony was Dave Van Horn's assistant for 8 years, I believe it was. Rock star, absolute rock star. Changed the trajectory of Tennessee baseball. Tennessee baseball was garbage when he got hired. Nobody wanted that job. Nobody. It was an SEC job, so everybody wanted it, but nobody really wanted that job. Tony turned that place into the cathedral of college baseball right now. Sully was an assistant on Jack Leggett's staff. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel.
He was never a head coach. Brian O'Connor was never a head coach. Nick Mingione was never a head coach. Like, Coach Schlossnagel's a head coach at Texas A&M, but Texas A&M bought him from TCU because they wanted to take that.
The thing is, too, Andy, is that a lot of people forget this. When Schloss took the TCU job, they were in the Mountain West. So let's not forget that either, right? Like, and I know that he went to 4 trips, 5 years into Omaha, like they were running fine, but they bought him. Texas A&M bought Schloss. Like, we'll just call it what it is. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel, guys. If you're watching this and you're an AD, stop trying to reinvent the wheel. Go and prove what has worked and what has worked at a really high level for a long time. Go hire a freaking rock star assistant coach. Because I promise you, you're going to be really happy with the way it works.
I think this rings true. I think this rings true across college baseball because we see it every year where coaches get recycled. And, I think a lot of programs come up short with some of these hires. And I think a lot of it is because the easy way out is to say, well, the guy's got head coaching experience. And I just don't think it really applies that much. I think the people that you coach for have a bigger impact on who you're going to be as a head coach and whether you've been a head coach or not. Like, if you've been a really good head coach, it's a different story. Someone like Link Jarrett, who it took Link, 15, 18 years or something to get a chance as head coach. UNCG, Notre Dame, Florida State, like, he was good head coach. And, now he's got Florida State back where they want to be. But you see a lot of these head coaches get recycled, and having been a head coach doesn't make you a good head coach. Like, if you're a good head coach, you're a good head coach. Like, I don't know. I'm not really sure if I'm articulating that properly, but you don't need to have been a head coach to become a good head coach. I think a lot of the people that you surround yourself with, the people that you hire, like it's no secret. Like you look at these staffs, like Josh Elander and Frank Anderson, like two of the most highly regarded guys. Max Weiner, like rock star pitching coach. Like you look at Virginia, the consistency they've had in that staff with Kevin McMullen, and now you got Drew there, Drew Dickinson, who had a really strong resume going into Illinois, coming out of Illinois. Like these are experienced guys that they elevate the head coach and they allow the head coach to be the head coach. So I think the personnel you bring in and the culture that you try to create, and a lot of that has to do with the people that you've been around and you've been impacted by as a coach. And it's not always the guys that you wear the uniform with, it's the people that you associate with and the people you go to when you got a question. That's how you learn, that's how you mature. And yeah, we've seen it through this cycle and we're going to continue to see it in the future, but I think it's lazy. And I think it's a cop out for a lot of these ADs because nobody will ever bat an eye if you hire a head coach. And yeah, I just think you're taking the safe way. And I don't think, especially at like some of these mid-major programs, like I don't think taking the safe path is the way that you achieve excellence beyond what you've achieved in the past. Like I think you have to take chances on people that you think can grow into being a head coach. Like make no mistake about it. Like if you've never been a head coach, you're going to have bumps. Doesn't matter who you've coached for because it's different responsibilities. You gotta delegate. Like you gotta be a part of that. And I've watched people figure that out. And I don't understand some of the decisions that are being made. And, there's some really good hires out there this cycle, but there's some other ones that I think a little bit of a head scratcher and don't make a ton of sense to me. And I think it's just people taking the easy way out because nobody will bat an eye.
Take a chance, man. That's all I'll tell you. And again, you don't have to listen to this. You can say what we talk about doesn't matter. None of that bothers me. Take a chance, man. Tennessee at that time, I don't even know who it was, the AD, but they took a chance on Tony Vitello, and all they've done is won. They literally can't have enough seats in the building because of what he did.
It's the same thing at Florida, and it's the same thing at Virginia. Like the people who haven't been involved in college baseball for 20 years don't realize that when Brian O'Connor took over Virginia, like Virginia wasn't good.
Nobody won that Virginia job when he took over. It's the same thing with the Tennessee job. They're in the same boat. They're in this exact same category. And what's silly to it, yeah. Florida, they barely had 1,000 seats at that place. That place was garbage.
They were 20 years ago, they were in the same spot that Tennessee was recently. And they went with an assistant coach and they're reaping the reward. Like we just looked at it. Kevin O'Sullivan's been there for 16 years to get 717 wins. Brian O'Connor's
Sully's never missed the postseason. Think about that. For a program that was garbage, he's never missed the postseason. And they're honestly, their like barometer of success is like, I think this year you would be like, yeah, like it was an okay year. Like, all right. They were 2 wins away from winning the whole, or 3 things away from winning the whole thing. And you're talking about a year where they're going into their exit meetings saying, well, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Really?
We got to get better.
We got to get better. Like, you're 3 wins away from winning the whole thing. Like, I guess it was actually 4 because they were in the losers bracket. So 4 we'll call it. But still, like, you know what I mean?
So, I mean, and not every assistant coach that you hire is going to end up winning a national championship. Like, don't get me wrong, but like if you want to move your program forward, going with an assistant who's got some fire in their belly and has been around good people, I just think it's a really good way to go.
No, and I totally agree with you. I'm not telling you that you have to hire the assistant who's had a lot of success, who's been around whatever. That's fine. But I think the one thing too is that just stop being scared of taking a chance, man. Take a chance. Take a chance. Go for it. Just see what happens. Because Tennessee did it. Florida did.
Might actually work. Here's
So
the other thing I want to say this about Tennessee, because I think this is really interesting. And I think you're seeing it with Florida. I think you're seeing it with Virginia. I think you're seeing it with A&M. And maybe it's because, and I think you're seeing it with some of these top programs that have like established cultures. You don't seem to see as many of their guys going into the portal, which I find very interesting because it's not like these programs aren't getting super high-end players, but Tennessee has brought most of this, like, don't get me wrong, Billy Hammock's a transfer, but like Blake Burke and Christian Moore and Tiers and Dreiling, like, actually, I'm not sure about Dreiling, but these are guys who've been in that program. Like, they could have left if they wanted to, right? Or if some of these guys who are on the bench for them right now that are superstars, they're not going into the portal right now, which I think is really interesting. And I think it speaks to guys wanting to play for these coaches in that they're willing to sacrifice for themselves a little bit, knowing that in the long term, it's going to be a really good decision for them. You got a kid like Ariel Antigua, who's one of the most highly touted kids to get to campus this year. He's played 6 games, and like, I don't know, maybe he'll go into the portal after they win the World Series. I don't know. But I'm guessing that kid's staying around because he sees a path to win and he sees a path to get better. And you can have any thought you want on the portal. It's a wild, wild thing right now. I saw some crazy stat today that, there's like 1,700 or 1,800 undergrads that are in the transfer portal right now, and only 400 of them have homes. Like, it's a crazy space right now, but to see some of these bigger programs not losing kids is interesting to me.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. But I think it kind of goes back to what we just talked about, right? Like, when you got a really good head coach and guys want to really play for you, you don't have guys leave. Like, and I know me and you have talked about this a lot. Like, and obviously Tony's reputation, I think, is slightly skewed because of the 2021 team and how they acted, and whether he let the reins out a little bit longer than he should have is a discussion for another day. But one thing about Tony that a lot of people don't remember is that Tony's had no change in assistants. Like I said about Ross, just Kivett. And Tony's guys went after Dave Van Horn in 2019 when Tennessee wasn't Tennessee what they are now. Tennessee's going to play for a national championship on Monday. And everyone wants to remember Tennessee what they were then. But people don't remember Tennessee in 2019 and 18. Nobody wanted to go to Tennessee. They had no seats. They had half the seating that they did. They weren't what they are. And there was a situation that happened with the recruit. And I said this to you, Andy, and we had talked about, Tony and just his reputation and the way he kind of led his program. Tennessee's players went after Dave Van Horn on a questionable decision by Arkansas, which it is what it is. It's a moot point. And I said to myself, when I watched the game, I was watching, it was on ESPNU. And again, I'm a loser. I watch way more college baseball than anybody else in the country. Maybe Andy watches more than me, but that's about it. I watched that game and I watched the end of it, how it kind of turned out. And I'm like, dude, there's nobody I would rather play for in the country than this dude. And again, this is when Tennessee was garbage. Like, this is not Tennessee now. This is not Tennessee playing for a national championship. This is when nobody wanted to play for Tennessee. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, like, these dudes would do that for him. And I'm like, this guy's the real deal. And I'm like, he'll win a national championship. And I hope on Tuesday or Wednesday, I hope that, just so I can pat myself on the back, not that it matters, but I hope that at some point in the next, 4 or 5 days, I can pat myself on the back. But I watched that, and I said this to Andy multiple times, and Keith as well, like, dude, this guy is different, man. Like, there's not 301 of these guys out there. They're not. And again, assistant coach, all in place. Can't win there. Can't win there. That's all everybody told him. I guarantee it. And nobody wants to say it now. But in 2017 or 18, when he got the job, it's all he heard. Not that good of a job. Can't win there. The seating, the facilities, it's in the East. Good luck, man. Good luck.
Trying to look up. Hold on. Trying to look up something real quick. Because I think these are stories that are worth telling. For some reason, I can't get it to pop up. But I'm trying to find. So I think this is a little bit of a lesson to some of these dudes who are hopping in the portal as quick as possible because they don't play right away. Is Christian Moore like barely played as a freshman? And I'm guessing that he isn't really upset that he stuck around at Tennessee and competed, because if he went into the portal as a freshman, I'm sure he would have garnered plenty of interest. It's not like he wasn't a high profile kid coming out of high school. But like, I just think sometimes when you stick things out, like, you get rewarded for it. And a kid like that, like, look at what he's gone through. Look at the progression he's made. He trusted in that coaching staff and they developed him. And I think there's a lot of stories like that in college baseball where the guys who stick it out, and I'm not saying that you stick it out blindly, but I think there's something to be said about having to earn your way into a role and maturing into, what ultimately becomes a professional. And I think it's up and down college baseball that, if the expectation is that you're going to come in and play right away, you're probably sorely mistaken. There's not a lot of freshmen running around who get a ton of burn in college baseball. And I think a lot of times guys need to just kind of stick things out and trust in your coaching staff and trust in your role and go and compete for some stuff. And he's a pretty good story when it comes to that. A kid who came out of the Northeast, he's a New York City kid. He went to Suffield Academy. They don't play a ton of baseball up there. I mean, Coach Brissett at Suffield's the man. You had a chance to get to know him as a high school player, and then got to know him a little bit when I was coaching. He used to work the Harvard camp all the time. But they don't play a ton of games up there, and Christian Moore probably wasn't ready to play in the SEC right away. And now he's turned himself into a pretty easy argument to say he's the best player in college baseball right now. And I think that those stories, they don't get talked about enough. They focus on the flash and like where he is right now, but you're not really focused on what a kid's going through, and what a kid has gone through to get to where he is. And I'm not anti-transfer portal by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's really good for college baseball in a lot of ways, but I think you got to really be honest about why you want to go in and why you're going into the portal, because a lot of times being comfortable in a place, knowing your surroundings, understanding a coaching philosophy, giving yourself a chance to mature, getting that feedback that you need to get in order to continue to get better, like, that works out for a lot of guys. It works out really, really well for a lot of guys. I think his story kind of speaks to that as well. Obviously, big Christian Moore fans on this. I think he's must-watch television at this point.
I think if you haven't locked in on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week, you should definitely lock in. But yeah, I mean, like you said, Andy, and I said this earlier, 22-8, day in and day out. And again, Texas A&M had a little hiccup just at the end. And honestly, the funny thing about A&M is A&M had a hiccup, and then they hit the injury bug. Like, they actually were healthy when they hit the hiccup. I think they lost 2 or 3 at Ole Miss. Kind of just like uncharacteristic of what they were all year. But they were healthy, which is wild. And then they like got healthy, and then they haven't skipped a beat. So I think you look at two teams, and I'm super biased because I called the man out in the middle of April that I thought the Wild Kitties would be here at the end. They're not. Florida took care of them today, early this morning. But if you look at those resumes between those three, Tennessee, A&M, and Kentucky, you really don't have a blemish. Like I said, A&M to a touch, but it's not horrible. It's basically a 10-day window, like where they didn't really play great. I think they lost 2 or 3 series in a row. I think they were like 2-4, but like nothing horrible. Again, they really never had a blemish on their resume, and honestly, as much as I respect Tennessee and I think Tennessee will win this thing next week, I almost give more credit to Texas A&M just because the way that they've done it with the injuries, with Braden Montgomery out, and their resume is just so impressive. So I'm going to pick Tennessee. If you were to ask me, I'm going to pick Tennessee. I'm going to pick Tennessee. Again, I think what TV's done with those dudes, I think the first time since 2021 that the number 1 overall seed gets over the hump. But there's just not enough you could say about Texas A&M and what they've done with that staff, and that they've done a phenomenal job. They've done. I don't even know if you can put it into words, to be honest with
you. Yeah, I'm going Tennessee. I mean, I picked them a couple weeks ago. I just think they're just so darn dangerous. A&M's going to get it to 3. I think this gets decided Monday night, like the Royal Rumble or Monday Night Raw. I think we get an electric game on Monday where that A&M bullpen matches up against that Tennessee offense, and I think the Tennessee offense ultimately comes out. This is an interesting tidbit, and I didn't know this until I just looked it up, but they haven't played this year. They didn't play in SEC play. So, yeah, there's plenty of data. Like, they know each other. They know all the tendencies and everything that they have available to them from a scouting perspective. But it's kind of cool that, yeah, it's 2 SEC teams again, but they haven't played each other. So this will be cool. It'll be cool to watch them go off and compete. And I mean, I don't think you can really ask for more when you're talking about the quality of the College World Series. I think the only losers in the College World Series, and you hit on this at the beginning, and we talked about this early back a while ago, that we just didn't think that even the top ACC teams were up to snuff when you're talking about the top SEC teams. And I think you saw that play out in the regionals. I think you saw it play out in the supers, that the top ACC teams are better than those middle SEC teams. Like this year, it was the LSUs, it was the South Carolinas, that type of the Alabamas that are really good ball clubs, but they're not better than Virginia or UNC, and in some cases like the Clemsons of the world. But those top SEC teams, the A&Ms, the Kentuckys, the Floridas, I mean, they're a little bit of an anomaly at this point, but I think we all expected them to be this good at the beginning of the year. And then, Tennessee, like they're just a notch better at the top of that conference right now. And it's going to be interesting to see in the years coming with the NIL stuff. Does the SEC get back in the mix in terms of, do they really have a team that's a legit national championship contender? Because as good as the ACC is, and we all know it's the second best conference in college baseball, and I don't think that that's really arguable. I think the Big 12 will make it interesting in the years coming because some of the teams that they're adding. But there's only been one ACC team who's won a national championship since 1950. That's not by accident. And I think the SEC proved it again this year that they're on a little bit of a different level, for various reasons. But I mean, you look at the stadiums, like you look at the money that they pump into these programs. Like if you're a kid and you have the opportunity to play in one of those schools, like there's not a ton of ACC schools that offer that kind of atmosphere and that kind of experience. And it's not a knock on the ACC schools. Like look at the atmosphere in Boshamer. Like that was incredible. Look at the atmosphere in Charlottesville. Incredible. But that's what it's like on a Wednesday night at A&M. And I think that's the difference. And like, if you're a kid who's splitting hairs between some of these schools, I think the SEC is going to win that battle. And, we'll see. Really thin margins. We've talked about that there's a lot of talent running around college baseball right now, and the margins continue to get thinner and thinner. But, once again, I think the SEC proved that they're just a little bit better than everybody else.
Yeah, hangs down with that. It's tight, man. It's tight. I think you saw with these games, like there's a ton of phenomenal programs out there. And I think there's nothing better right now than college baseball in this game. I think, and again, I'm super biased, but I don't think there's much better than what we watched the last 2 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks. Like it's electric. It's been phenomenal. It's 2 and 3 and 4 seeds beating up on 1 seeds. It's Evansville going to regional final. It's Evansville going to super. Like if you're not in on this after watching the last month, like I said, 2 or 3 weeks, like I don't have anything for you. Like this is as good as it comes. So embrace it, love it, support it. Because there's nothing better. There's nothing better than what we just watched. And we're gonna get a chance to watch 3 good games. I don't think we're gonna have 2. I think we're gonna have 3 really, really good games. You're gonna see Texas A&M with Schloss try to outcoach TV, and it's gonna be awesome. But you're gonna see 3 really, I think you're gonna see 3 really good games, and you've watched, last 2 or 3 weeks, month. That's phenomenal. Lock in, because I think be along for the ride, because I think that the ride's gonna be phenomenal. And me and Andy have talked about this, and Keith, we all talked about this. Like, jump on the carpet, because the carpet ride's gonna be super legit. We're only scratching the surface with crowds, with ratings, and you saw, shoot, LSU Wofford's breaking records on ESPN. Like, we're only scratching the surface here. Just lock in. This is going to be fun.
When JJ's running the show, you got to show up and watch that game, baby.
I think that's part of me. I didn't tell JJ, maybe his raise coincides with, my shout out on the podcast.
No, college baseball is in an awesome place, and I know people don't fall victim to all the Twitter BS with these guys who come in and try to hammer it about, nitpicking at everything that's wrong with it. Like, you can have your opinions, nothing's perfect, and NIL money in the transfer portal, yada yada yada. But look at the product, look at the quality of baseball, look at the fandom, embrace it. It is what it is at this point. You can't deny the level of play. You can't deny the talent. You can't deny the electricity around it right now. And, don't let those talking heads on Twitter tell you that, the one knee stuff and guys don't throw enough strikes. And that's another conversation about where training's going and all that kind of stuff. But just appreciate it in its purest form. These kids played their asses off. They
Watch,
compete.
just watch, just
They
watch.
compete
It's
so
amazing.
hard, and it's such a pure form of college baseball. And you got guys laying it on the line, crashing into walls, running out double play balls because that's how you're supposed to play. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm a purist, but watching a kid like Christian Moore, who's the best player in the country, beat out a double play ball to keep an inning alive. Like, I watch 16-year-old kids on the weekend hit a ground ball to the second baseman and don't want to run down the first baseline. This kid's busting his ass down the line for the 200th time in the year, and he's running a 4-1 because he always runs a 4-1. Like, if you're a player watching, pay attention to that kind of stuff. Like, you're trying to get recruited, and you hit a ground ball to the shortstop, and you can't run down the first base line. Why are you going to get recruited when the best player in the country, who has everything to lose, is busting his ass to not have a double play turned over on him so he can get the bat to the next guy in the lineup? And that's what I love about watching baseball at this level. And you saw it throughout the regionals. You saw it throughout the supers. This isn't these guys turning it on for national television. Like, that's the expectation at the college level, is that you do that. And watching these super talented players, and we text about it all the time, like, I can't believe how good some of these kids are. The defense, the arm talent, the quality of their bats, the competitiveness. Like, if you want to be a part of this at any level and you're a recruit who's listening to this, or you're a parent who's listening to this, that's box number one that's got to get checked. Like, if you can't compete with that kind of intensity, this ain't for you. It ain't for you. And yeah, appreciate it, enjoy it. Like, you're going to have to wait, 9 months, 8 months before you get to watch any of this stuff again. Like, you got, hopefully 3 more games left. Enjoy watching the 2 best teams in college baseball compete to win a national championship, and take out of it what you can in terms of the lessons learned. And yeah, it's just fun, man. It's just fun to watch these kids compete.
Enjoy this on a ESPN level, because for a long time this was not the case. And I think that's one of the best things to take from this, is that this wasn't the case for a long time. College baseball was on ESPN2, on ESPNU, on ESPN3. It's right there for you, man. It's right there for you guys. Like, show it off. Like, and it's only getting better. It's only getting better. And I think, like Andy says, like, just enjoy it. Watch it. Watch it. I tell our guys all the time that play for me, that are around me all the time, like, guys, just go watch college baseball. Just watch it. Just watch it. It's awesome, man. It is an awesome product. It is turned itself into must-watch TV. And even if you don't ever play at Division I level, or you play, for, obviously what these guys are playing for, just watch it, because it is a phenomenal product, and there's nothing better. And again, I'm a little biased. I love it because I watch it on a Tuesday in February when nobody has any interest in baseball. But I think it's a phenomenal product, and I think you'll be so excited if you even have the just slightest ambition to play at the college level, to watch it and see it at this level. It's really, really, really cool. So I'm going to root for the Vols. Andy's going to root for the Vols. I don't think there's anything wrong with what Shalosh and Co. has done with A&M, so I'm not going to take anything away from them. So I'm going to give them a hat tip. I think Max Wiener, their pitching coach, has done an amazing job. And I know Max, he's a phenomenal individual as well. So I'll throw that in there. But I think the number 1 overall seed wins this whole thing for the first time since 2001.
TV to the moon. Tennessee baseball to the moon. I'm a converted fan. I can't get enough of just what they do. So I hope they take it home.
And in 2018,
yeah,
when they hired Tony, can you imagine telling they would win a national championship in 5 years, 7 years?
Probably not. It's
basically 6 seats.
Yeah, it's incredible. The only thing that's pulling at my heartstrings is that Hayden Schott is one of my favorite college baseball players of all time.
Columbia, right?
Because I got a chance to watch him play a bunch when he was at Columbia.
Yeah.
And any of you guys who listen to this, or just in general, if you're familiar with that Columbia program, they do it the right way. And the kids play hard and they compete. And Hayden was a part of that. I bet you if you asked Coach Schlossnagle, one of the guys who is the straw that stirs the drink there, I'm guessing he's going to tell you it's Hayden Schott.
No, I wouldn't even guess. I'll be honest.
I'm guessing he's going to say it's Jackson Appel too.
Yeah. Coaching against them, and I know Coach Brady really well because I talked to him actually today. You don't have to guess. Schloss will tell you Hayden Schott stirs the drink that operation goes with. And it's impressive what he's done at Columbia, and he's another person that should be, any ADs that are listening to this, get your head out of your butts and hire this dude, because he will win you at a super high level. And I never worked for him, but I worked for him. I worked around him. I talk to him now on a regular basis, and get your heads out of your butts. So that's all I'll say. But yeah, Hayden Schott's a star. What Coach Brady's done and what Coach Yurkow has done at Penn is impressive. So.
Yep. Any other parting thoughts, Coach?
Nah, I think I've shared enough wisdom here tonight.
All right.
Well, you're good with me.
Thank you for listening. That was a little bit of a mixed bag. We had some college baseball talk. We had some coaching talk. We had a little bit of a recruiting bundle in there. I think this is a pretty productive pod. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. We'll check in with you next week and enjoy the College World Series final. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thank you for listening this week. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and smash that like button for us. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at EMD Baseball. If you want to find out what me and Keith do to help families and players navigate the recruiting process, go ahead and check us out on emdbaseball.com. Take a few minutes to check out our new online academy. I promise you'll get some good information out of that. Thanks again for listening. Check in with you next week.